Assalamualaikum everyone. I've decided that we'll be analyzing the games played between Mr. Vishwananthan Aanand and the greatest Pakistani chess minds of the 1980s and 1990s. So obviously all of you know about Mr. Anand. He is the first Indian Grandmaster and a former world champion before Magnus Carlsen. And the first person whose game we'll be analyzing today is Mr. Sahi Alam Bhatt, who had a peak rating of 2335. And if you check the current rating list, he's rated about 2295. But he is inactive since 1990. He didn't play a game after that and went into chess retirement. I don't know why. But at his peak, he was rated 2335, and when this game was played, it was he was rated 2330. So pretty much clear that he was near his peak when this game was played. So this game was played in the World Championships under 20 1987. And without much further ado, we'll start analyzing the game right away. So Mr. Anand with the white pieces begin with the move knight f3. So this isn't his usual e5 repertoire, e4 repertoire which he goes for. I don't know why, but maybe he had prepared something for his opponent because it's India versus Pakistan, and in any sport, India versus Pakistan is a very tough match for both the players because there's great expectations for them to win. Mr. Anand is the leading chess player of his country, and it's safe to assume that Mr. Bhatt is the leading chess player at that time, maybe only a position behind Mr. Lodhi of his respective country. So it's safe to assume that maybe Mr. Anand had prepared something. But Mr. Bhatt goes for the move c5. The Sicilian invitation is on the board, and Mr. Anand obviously goes for then e4. So we have e6, d4, c captures d4, knight captures d4, knight f6, knight c3, and d6. A bit of an unorthodox move, but then again, Pakistani chess players are known to make unorthodox moves. So what this move does is that it basically says that I have two central pawns while you have one, and black isn't developing through the normal knight c6 routine, but rather keeping his plans uncertain to say the least. So Mr. Anand finds, obviously, I mean, he knows that the best defense, even considered nowadays, is g4, the most ambitious attempt. So this is known as the Sicilian defense, Savishnigan variation, the Chris attack. So obviously over here, White is going to aim to pushing all of his king side pawns, bring his queen out this way, his bishop here, and he'll be castling her queen side this game. So Mr. Bhatt replies with h6, give h4, knight c6, knight come out, and rook g1, threatening to push g5. Over here, knight captures d4 was played. So it's a bit of an odd move. It's a dubious move because usually you don't take over here. You usually either your opponent takes over here or he plays some other move like a knight to b5 or knight goes back here. But Pakistani players are often known to make such moves and get away with it. So we have queen captures d4 and e5. Queen goes back, but this does weaken the d5 square. We have bishop e6 taking control of the square, and queen f3. White makes his intentions known that he will be eyeing, trying to push the pawn and eyeing the king side. So we have bishop e7 and g5. H captures g5, h captures g5, and knight goes back to d7. We have g6 even, further undermining black's kingside pawn structure, and bishop f6 cutting off the queen's influence over the f file. We have bishop d2 preparing queenside castle, and a6. So a6 basically prevents both knight b5 and bishop b5 ideas, and maybe even trying to push b5 in some lines. So we have long castle and queen c7, aligning the queen with the king as you should do. And a very nice move by Mr. Anand over here, knight d5. So it's a very pretty move because it makes use of the fact that white left a hole on d5, and it places a very strong piece on d5, almost forcing Mr. Butt to take the knight and part ways with the bishop pair. So that's exactly what he does. Bishop captures d5, e captures d5, and f captures g6, obviously not allowing to take with check and putting the king in the center because that would be disastrous for black. So we have queen g4, uh, preparing to pick up the pawn as well as pinning the knight if long castles ever take place. So we have a queenside castle. Queen captures g6, king b8, rook g4. Rook g4 is threatening to play is threatening to play rook c4. Obviously, if black goes astray over here and plays a random move like rook here, then he could find himself in a very difficult position to play. After rook c4, queen goes back, bishop goes here, and already you can see that white's bishop eyed the queen side. His queen can easily come back, whereas now uh, black's rooks are looking kind of silly eyeing the king side, whereas the king is over here. The action's taking place on the queen side, and most of his pieces are on the king side. So after after rook g4, rook c8 was played. We have rook c4, queen d8, rooks are exchanged, and king b1. Here we have knight c5, putting the knight on a more useful square than d7, but this knight could be pushed in the future. So we have bishop e3. Wait a minute, where was I? Bishop e3 and rook h4. Uh, we have c3 preparing to push b4 in the future. So rook g4, queen goes back to c2, and rook g1 in asking white whether he wants to move down to an endgame by trading the last pair of rooks. So white does reply in kind. So bishop e2, rooks are exchanged, and queen h3. So queen h3 is probably trying to infiltrate over here as well as maybe get some checks in, or just simply maybe improve the position of his queen from a passive role over here. So b4, knight goes back to d7, queen e4, threatening. It's a very nice centralizing move as well as threatening a fork right here, and knight f8. So knight f8 isn't the best move. But here maybe queen f1 could have been played, which is a very interesting concept. The king is forced to come out, and after which black does have some chances. But over here, what this does is it puts the knight on a very passive square, and maybe something after this and this knight is completely blocked out for the rest of the game. So although he did um, come out of the tactical uh, flaws in his positions. Positionally, he is worse after this move. So we have exactly the move, bishop g4, queen h7, asking for a trade of queens and activating his knight this way. Maybe if he can trade off some pieces, he could try to hold the position. I mean, a draw would be fine for black because his opponent's rated 200 points above him. So uh, after queen h7, we have bishop f5, g6, and bishop g4. Uh, Over here, black errs and plays g5. Mr. Anand over here exploited this mistake to its fullest and found a very beautiful idea. So this is the cue for you guys to pause the video and try to find the best winning move. Uh, yes, so queen captures h7 was played, knight captures h7, and after bishop f5, knight f8, bishop b6, black is technically in his zone. His king can't move anywhere except these two squares. His bishop is trapped behind his pawns, and this knight is effectively cut off from the entire game. So, obviously, to make any sort of progress, black would either have to let go of this pawn or let go of this pawn. So, that's exactly what Mr. Bhatt does. G4. And over here, Mr. Anand shows his class and doesn't even take the pawn. He plays c4, threatening to push all of his queenside pawns up the board and basically exploit the fact that he has a better structure than pawn structure than black. So bishop h4 was played, trying to get his bishop back into the game, but to no avail. a4 even, king a8 because there's literally nothing else he can do. a5, king b8, and c5. So now this does seem like he blundered a pawn, but and Mr. Butt even takes the pawn. But this turns out to be a fatal mistake as he designs the next move. So feel free to pause the video once again and find the move. So the move is c6. A very interesting idea because now it's important for black to take because otherwise white just queens, and if he does take, what ends up happening is after takes takes takes, white is completely winning because there is no way to stop promotion. So yeah, this was it. This was the first of uh, the video series of India versus Pakistan. I'll be uploading or three more games. One played between Mr. Mahmood Lodi, the highest rated player of Pakistan, versus Mr. Vishwananthan Aanand. And the other game which I'll be uploading will be Mr. FIDE Master Wakar versus Mr. Vishwananthan Aanand. So yeah, I'll be uploading those in a day or two. Stay tuned and goodbye.